look that shook Golden State. One frozen look from Stephen Curry was all it took for NBA fans to ask the question Warriors Nation feared most. Is this dynasty finally breaking from the inside? It happened during a painful night at Chase Center, with Golden State getting crushed by the Los Angeles Lakers and Curry stuck on the sideline, dealing with knee pain instead of saving his team on the floor. Draymond Green was fired up, barking in the huddle, demanding more, doing what Draymond has always done. But this time, the camera did not focus on Draymond's voice. It caught Steph's face. No smile, no reaction, no encouragement, just silence. And in today's NBA world, silence can become louder than a locker room argument. Within hours, that clip was everywhere. Fans were saying Steph looked exhausted. Others claimed he was finally tired of Draymond's chaos. Some even called it the beginning of the end for the Warriors' legendary core. And honestly, it was easy to understand why. This was not just one bad timeout. This was one moment sitting on top of months of frustration, injuries, losses, trade rumors, and emotional tension around a team that once looked untouchable. Draymond later pushed back hard. He said people were reading the moment wrong. According to him, Steph was not angry at him. Steph was simply frustrated because the Warriors were getting embarrassed. The best player was hurt, and nobody on that bench had a reason to smile. But that explanation did not kill the story. It only made the story deeper. Because the real question was never just whether Steph was tired of Draymond. The real question was whether Steph was tired of all of it. The losing, the drama, the aging roster, and the feeling that the Warriors' championship window was slipping away right in front of him. And when a dynasty starts to crack, it rarely begins with a trade. Sometimes it begins with a look. Where are you watching from right now? Comment your city below. If you think Steph is still loyal to Draymond, press 1-inch the comments. If you think Curry is finally tired of the drama, press 2. And don't forget to subscribe, because this Warriors story is only getting darker from here. The fire that used to save them for years. Draymond Green's anger was not treated like a problem. It was treated like fuel. When the Warriors were winning championships, his voice was the alarm bell, his intensity was the heartbeat, and his edge was the thing that made Golden State feel different from every other beautiful shooting team in the league. Steph Curry gave them magic. Klay Thompson gave them silence and daggers. Steve Kerr gave them structure. But Draymond gave them teeth. That was why, for so long, the Warriors lived with everything that came with him. The yelling, the arguments, the technical fouls, the emotional storms that could turn a regular night in January into a national headline. When banners are going up, people call that passion. When losses start piling up, the same passion suddenly looks like chaos. And that is where this Warriors story started to twist. Because the moment with Curry did not happen in the middle of a dominant run. It happened during a season when Golden State looked old, tired, and dangerously close to losing its identity. The team was no longer moving like the machine that once terrorized the NBA. The defense had cracks. The offense had long, dry spells. The young players were unsure of their roles. The veterans were carrying memories heavier than their legs. And Draymond was still Draymond. He still demanded perfection. He still pointed. He still shouted. He still tried to hold everyone to a championship standard. But the painful truth was this. The Warriors were no longer playing like a championship team. That made every Draymond outburst feel different. It was no longer just leadership from a proven winner. It became a reminder of how far the team had fallen. Every argument, every emotional timeout, every viral bench moment became another sign that Golden State was fighting not only its opponents, but also itself. And that is what made Steph's silent face so powerful. He had seen this movie before. He had lived through the fire, survived the tension, and won because of it. But now, for the first time, fans wondered if that same fire was burning the Warriors from the inside. Kerr and Draymond finally boil over. The Warriors' problems did not begin with Steph's face against the Lakers. They had already been building weeks earlier when Draymond Green and Steve Kerr got caught in another emotional storm. It was supposed to be a good night. Golden State was beating Orlando, controlling the game, and putting together the kind of performance that should have given the locker room some peace. But with this version of the Warriors, peace never seemed to last long. During a timeout, Kerr wanted focus. Draymond was caught up in a heated exchange with officials. Players tried to pull him back into the huddle. Kerr started calling his name. Draymond thought he was being blamed for something else. One sharp comment turned into another. Suddenly, coach and player were face to face in another public reminder that this team's emotional temperature was dangerously high. The most important part was not that they argued. Kerr and Draymond have argued before. Fiery people clash. Championship teams are not always quiet teams. But this time felt heavier because the Warriors no longer had the same cushion. In the past, winning covered the wounds. Now every wound was exposed under bright lights. Kerr later took responsibility and admitted he should have stayed calm. That mattered. It showed that the relationship was not broken beyond repair. But it also showed something else. Even the people who built this dynasty were running out of patience. For more than a decade, Kerr and Draymond had survived on trust. Kerr trusted Draymond's basketball brain. Draymond trusted Kerr's system. Together with Curry, they created one of the greatest runs in modern NBA history. But trust does not erase fatigue. And after years of pressure, expectations, injuries, and emotional battles, even championship relationships can start to shake. That timeout was not just a fight, it was a warning. The Warriors were still together physically, but emotionally, the dynasty was starting to feel fragile. The season that broke the illusion, Golden State entered the season selling one final dream. Steph Curry was still great, Draymond Green was still the defensive brain, Jimmy Butler was supposed to bring toughness, calm, and another veteran star who could carry pressure when Steph needed help. On paper, it sounded like one last serious run. But the NBA does not care about old banners. It does not care what a team used to be. It only exposes what a team is right now. And what the Warriors became was unstable. Injuries kept tearing holes through the roster. Curry's knee issue robbed Golden State of its most reliable source of hope. Butler's health became another heavy concern. Role players moved in and out of the lineup. Young players were asked to grow quickly while veterans tried to survive a season that never found rhythm. Steve Kerr was forced to adjust again and again, searching for combinations that could keep the Warriors alive. But every time the team looked like it might steady itself, another problem appeared. That is why the viral Curry and Draymond clip hit so hard. Fans were not reacting only to body language. They were reacting to the entire weight of the season. They saw an aging superstar on the sideline. They saw a fiery veteran still screaming for standards the team could not consistently reach. They saw a coach trying to manage both legacy and reality. They saw a franchise caught between honoring the past and admitting the future was arriving fast. And worst of all, they saw something that Warriors fans were not used to seeing. They saw helplessness. For years, Golden State always had an answer. A Curry explosion, a Draymond stop, a Kerr adjustment, a championship-level response. But now, the answers were harder to find. The dynasty was not destroyed in one night. It was worn down slowly. One injury, one loss, one argument, and one uncomfortable silence at a time. The Draymond problem nobody can solve. Draymond Green is not easy to replace. That is the problem. People can talk about his age, his contract, his technical fouls, his arguments, and his declining numbers. But when the Warriors actually step on the floor, they still need what only Draymond understands. He sees actions before they happen. He knows where Steph wants the ball. He can organize a defense with one shout. He can guard bigger players, switch onto smaller players, and turn one loose possession into a momentum swing. That is why Golden State has never been able to treat him like just another veteran. But the other side of the story is impossible to ignore. Draymond's value comes with emotional cost. His fire can lift a team, but it can also drain one. His voice can sharpen young players, but it can also overwhelm them. His intensity can create championship urgency, but when the team is losing, that same urgency starts to feel like pressure. Nobody can breathe under. That is the contradiction at the center of the Warriors' future. Draymond may no longer be the same player he was at his peak, but he still carries the reputation, the pride, and the voice of a superstar-level leader. That makes any role change difficult. How do you ask the loudest man in the room to speak softer? How do you ask the heart of the dynasty to beat slower? How do you tell a player who helped build the culture that the culture now needs to evolve beyond him? That is not just a basketball question. That is a human one. The Warriors are not deciding whether Draymond mattered. He did. He always will. They are deciding how much he can still matter without holding back the next version of the team. And that is where things get dangerous. Because legends do not always struggle with leaving. Sometimes they struggle with becoming smaller while they are still in the room. Steph Curry's silence says everything. Stephen Curry has never been the loudest leader in the NBA. He does not need to be. His leadership has always come through calm, work, sacrifice, and the kind of confidence that makes everyone else believe. That is why his silence in that viral clip mattered so much. Curry did not yell back. He did not roll his eyes dramatically. He did not create a scene. He just stood there expressionless while Draymond poured emotion into the huddle. And somehow, that was more powerful than any argument could have been, because fans know Steph. They know he has defended Draymond for years. They know he has accepted the chaos because the winning made it worth it. They know he has stood beside this core through criticism, roster changes, and pressure that would have broken most teams. So when Steph looks tired, people notice. Maybe he was not tired of Draymond personally. Maybe Draymond was right. Maybe Steph was simply angry that the Warriors were getting embarrassed while he could not help. But even that explanation leads to the same painful place. Steph Curry is tired of losing, and that changes everything. At this stage of his career, Curry does not have endless seasons left to chase another championship. Every year matters, every roster decision matters, every emotional distraction matters. The Warriors cannot afford to waste time pretending the old formula will magically return. Steph's greatness is still real, but it needs support, it needs health, it needs structure, it needs a team that is not constantly battling noise around itself. That is why the Warriors front office faces such a brutal decision. Keeping Draymond honors the past and protects the emotional identity of the team. Changing his role, contract, or future might be necessary to protect the remaining years of Steph's career. And somewhere inside that tension sits the real question. How much loyalty can a franchise afford when time is running out? The money behind the drama. Every viral clip has a deeper story behind it. For the Warriors, that deeper story is money. Draymond Green's future is not only about emotion, loyalty, or chemistry. It is about contract numbers, roster flexibility, luxury tax pressure, and whether Golden State can build a serious team around Stephen Curry before the window closes completely. That is why this situation is so delicate. Draymond wants respect. After everything he helped build, he believes he deserves fairness from the only franchise he has ever truly called home. And from his point of view, that makes sense. 4 championships, years of defensive sacrifice, a career spent doing the dirty work that never looked pretty in box scores but shaped the Warriors' entire identity. But the front office has to look at a colder reality. Draymond is older now. His defensive impact is still important, but it is not automatic every night. His offensive limitations are harder to hide when the roster lacks rhythm. His emotional volatility can become more expensive when the team is no longer winning at an elite level. That is where legacy and business collide. The Warriors may want him back, Steve Kerr may want him to retire in Golden State, Curry may still trust him more than almost anyone on the floor. But wanting a player back and paying him like the old version of himself are two very different things. If Draymond takes less money for more years, maybe the relationship survives smoothly. If he chooses the bigger short-term number, I think that may have less flexibility. If trade talks return, the emotional damage would become real. And here is the part fans often miss. NBA teams do not only pay for what a player did, they pay for what they believe he can still do. That is a brutal truth for every aging star, especially one whose value has never been fully explained by points, rebounds, or highlights. Draymond's greatest strengths have always lived in the margins. The rotation before the pass, the screen before the shot, the defensive call before the breakdown, the emotional push before the collapse. But front offices still have to put a number on that. They still have to ask whether those invisible things are worth limiting the team's ability to add shooting, size, youth, or another reliable scorer besides Steph. That is why 2 words matter so much: treated fairly. To Draymond, fair may mean respect, security, and recognition for everything he gave. To the Warriors, fair may mean a deal that helps them build a younger, faster, deeper roster. Both sides can be right, and that is what makes this so complicated. Sometimes the hardest NBA breakup is not caused by anger, it is caused by math. And when math enters a relationship built on loyalty, every conversation suddenly feels personal. Barkley said what everyone was thinking. Then came the comment that cut through all the noise. Charles Barkley looked at Draymond Green and said what many NBA fans had been whispering: the Warriors' championship run might be over. That kind of statement hits differently when it is said directly to one of the men who built the dynasty. Draymond has heard criticism before. He has argued with analysts, fans, opponents, and sometimes even his own coaches. But this was not just criticism. This was a public reminder that time eventually defeats every great team. Barkley's message was simple and brutal. Golden State had its run. The core got older. Klay Thompson was gone. Steph and Draymond were on the back end of their careers. If Curry truly wanted another title, maybe he would eventually have to consider a future away from the only franchise he has ever known. That idea sounds almost impossible. Steph Curry leaving the Warriors feels like imagining the skyline without the bridge. He is the face, the soul, the symbol of everything Golden State became. But Barkley was not speaking emotionally. He was speaking like someone who has watched the NBA for decades and knows that loyalty becomes painful when it collides with reality. Draymond did not have some fiery answer that destroyed the argument. He did not laugh it off. He did not promise another championship. Instead, his response carried uncertainty, and that uncertainty said a lot. Because if Draymond truly believed the Warriors were one move away, he would have said it. If he truly believed the old formula still scared the league, he would have pushed back immediately. But the hesitation told fans something uncomfortable. Even inside the dynasty, even among the people who built it, There is an understanding that the old days are not coming back simply because they want them to. The Warriors are no longer in the stage where they can simply declare belief and expect the league to fear them. They have to prove the foundation still holds. They have to prove Curry still has enough around him. They have to prove Draymond's fire still creates more winning than distraction. And maybe that is why Barkley's words hit so hard. He was not attacking Golden State's past. He was forcing everyone to look at its present. He was asking the painful question great franchises hate. Are you still chasing another championship? Or are you just protecting the memory of the last one? That is why Barkley's words matter. He did not end the dynasty. He simply said out loud that the ending might already be here. And once a sentence like that enters the room, nobody can pretend they did not hear it. The future role Draymond may not want. There is a version of this story where Draymond Green stays with the Warriors and everything works. He accepts a smaller role. He plays fewer minutes. He becomes more selective with his emotional energy. He mentors younger players without overwhelming them. He anchors key defensive possessions instead of carrying the weight every night. He helps Steph chase one more deep playoff run while slowly preparing for life after basketball. That version sounds peaceful, but peaceful has never been Draymond's natural language. Draymond built his career by refusing to shrink. He was undersized, overlooked, underestimated, and still forced himself into the center of one of the greatest dynasties in NBA history. His entire identity was built on being louder, sharper, tougher, and more emotionally present than everyone else. So asking him to become quieter is not simple. The Warriors may need him to transition from engine to stabilizer, from emotional center to veteran guide, from every night defensive commander to strategic specialist. That kind of shift requires humility from a player whose greatness was built on pride. And this is where the next chapter of Golden State could either survive or explode. If Draymond accepts the evolution, he can finish his career as a Warrior, protect his legacy, and help the franchise bridge its past to its future. If he fights the change, every reduced minute, every late game benching, every young player mistake, and every contract conversation could become another spark. Because the hardest part of aging in the NBA is not always physical, it is emotional. Your body changes before your mind is ready to admit it. The league gets younger, faster, and less sentimental. Players you once taught begin taking your minutes. Coaches start measuring your impact differently. Front offices start using words like flexibility, efficiency, timeline, and role. Those words sound harmless in a press conference, but to a proud veteran, they can feel like warnings. That is the test waiting for Draymond. Can he still be the heart of the Warriors if he is no longer the loudest heartbeat every possession? Can he guide the next generation without seeing their rise as a threat to his own place? Can he accept that helping Steph may now mean sacrificing not just shots or touches, but status? And that is where the locker room becomes more important than the box score. Because if Draymond buys in, everyone else has a model to follow. Young players will see a champion accepting change. Veterans will see a leader choosing the team over ego. Steph will see the trust that carried Golden State for more than a decade, still alive in a different form. But if Draymond resists, the pressure will spread quickly. A small role adjustment can turn into a headline. A normal coaching decision can become a controversy. A young player's mistake can become another viral clip. That is why this next stage requires more than talent. It requires self-awareness. Draymond does not have to become quiet. The Warriors do not need him to lose his edge. What they need is for that edge to become sharper, not louder. They need his voice to guide instead of dominate. They need his fire to warm the room, not burn it down. They need him to understand that the final act of a great player's career is not about proving he is still the same man. It is about proving he can still help winning, even when the job description changes. That might be the hardest challenge of all, because basketball skills decline gradually, but identity is harder to change. Draymond Green can still help Golden State. The question is whether he can help them in the way they need now, not the way they needed 10 years ago. The dynasty, the lesson, and the ending. In the end, this story is not just about one viral clip, one angry timeout, one contract, or one uncomfortable look from Stephen Curry. It is about what happens when greatness gets older and the world starts asking it to change. The Warriors were never a normal dynasty. They were built on joy, movement, shooting, defense, sacrifice, and emotional fire. Steph Curry changed how basketball is played. Steve Kerr built a system that unlocked history. Draymond Green gave that system its edge, its voice, and its competitive soul. That legacy is safe. No bad season can erase 4 championships. No viral clip can erase years of trust. No contract negotiation can erase the nights when Draymond guarded everyone. Steph bent defenses until they broke, and Golden State made the impossible look normal. But legacy does not win future games by itself. That is the lesson for the Warriors now. They cannot live only on memory. They have to be honest about age, health, money, chemistry, and the emotional cost of trying to extend a dynasty past its natural limits. If they want one more real run with Curry, they need clarity, they need discipline, they need peace inside the building, and they need every veteran, including Draymond, to understand that sacrifice looks different at the end than it did at the beginning. For Draymond, the lesson is just as human. Fire can build something great, but wisdom is knowing when to control the flame. Leadership is not only demanding more from others, sometimes leadership is accepting a new role with grace. Maybe Draymond stays, maybe his role changes, maybe the Warriors find one last run, or maybe this is simply the final chapter of a beautiful basketball era. But whatever happens next, fans should remember this with respect. Every dynasty ends, but not every dynasty changes the game forever. If you believe the Warriors should keep Draymond and give this core one last chance, comment 1. If you think Golden State must finally move into a new era, comment 2. Subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share it with a real NBA fan, because the next Warriors decision could change everything.